If you're one of those people who talk a big game about WWE needing to improve the women's division, I hope you are as loud as your criticism, because WWE is finally fixing it. And it's true. Like, the reality is, you can tell Vince McMahon is no longer running the WWE creative when Triple H has Xia Li, Candice LeRae, and Indy Hartwell on TV. And you can tell that Vince McMahon is not running the women's division when there are multiple women's segments and matches happening on Monday Night Raw. Look, the problem is not solved. I'm not going to sit here and act like it is. But this is a very vast improvement over what we have seen throughout the years. Let's just throw it out there on the table. NXT has never had this problem. At least I can't recall a time where NXT has had a major problem with their women's division. It's always been highlighted. Maybe even more so with Shawn Michaels running the creative of NXT. But the women's division in NXT never translated well to the main roster. And under Vince McMahon, these women got called up. These women got brought up to the main roster, and not many of them would be used. Not many of them would be utilized at all. In fact, women's matches would get canceled. First, they would advertise them. Then they would cancel them. Then they would just altogether drop storylines. Triple H immediately, with 100% control, already started putting all these underutilized talents and started putting them in the ring with Becky Lynch. And it's actually done wonders for Becky Lynch, because the storyline in itself is that Becky Lynch is willing to take on any competitor. She's willing to give anybody a chance, and that's exactly what she's doing. Now that she's doing it, you're starting to see newer faces. And I say newer, but really it's the underutilized talent that are finally getting a chance. I mean, they even have Lyra Valkyria from NXT showing up sitting front row, going face-to-face with Becky Lynch the night before Halloween Havoc. So now this is also enticing for you to watch NXT. It's a good start. It's a really good start. And the problem is, we don't know what the end result is. So that's the problem. But if WWE continues with this trend of having multiple segments and multiple women's matches and multiple promos and stories for their women's division on the main roster, that's going to make WWE very, very popular within the IWC. Or at least I think. I mean, of course, people like to sit on the IWC and say, WWE sucks at this. Then WWE does it, and then people get pissed that WWE is doing it. You can't satisfy everybody. But what I've learned by watching WWE and by creating content is that a lot of people have, for a long time, really hoped WWE would improve their women's division. And it starts by putting them on TV. You know, the reactions for Becky Lynch and Indy Hartwell weren't that loud. They weren't. And I see people, they're on Twitter, they're like, oh, nobody gives a shit about this. Yeah, no, you're right. Nobody gives a shit about it. You want to know why nobody gives a shit about it? Because WWE has neglected their women's division booking for years and years and years. They put Indy Hartwell on TV once in a while. Then they don't put her on TV for a while. And then she finally gets a story. She finally has something going for herself. And then they put her in the ring with Becky Lynch. The purpose of that match is so that people eventually start to care about Indy Hartwell. The purpose is for people to eventually start caring about Tegan Nox, to eventually start caring about all of these other ladies on the main roster. The thing is, the women have the talent. We're not going to sit here and act like they're not talented, because if you're one of those people spewing that message, you're wrong. The women in WWE are incredibly talented. And guess what? The women in AEW are incredibly talented. But sometimes the booking doesn't reflect that. And that's why I've always said Impact Wrestling, now they'll be known as TNA in 2024, but TNA has always had a very, 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 very consistent approach to their Knockouts division. And if it wasn't for Shawn Michaels and NXT, I don't know what else I would say. Because, look, NXT, women's division is phenomenal. Impact Wrestling, TNA Impact, their women's division is phenomenal. And both of those shows prove it with their booking. AEW doesn't. And WWE's main roster doesn't. But we're starting to finally see that change. And it's going to be gradual. The reactions will not be loud every single week. But if WWE commits to this, I think it solves the problem. The reality is you got to come up with characters and meaningful stories for people to react to. But it's hard for somebody to react to, Indy Hartwell when she's not consistently on TV. The reason why people, react to Becky Lynch or Bianca Belair or Charlotte was because from the moment they arrived on the main roster, they were always perceived as a big deal. Io Sky and Zelina Vega are also great examples of getting good reactions because they're a little bit more consistently on TV. They're involved with big programs, with the LWO or Damage Control. So they're able to get those reactions. But Xia Li, who was brought up to SmackDown, never did anything on SmackDown, then goes to Raw, never really had anything on TV going for her. She's not going to get reactions right away. But the more that you put them on TV and come up with some cool stories and some cool matches, and you really let them do their thing, I think they're going to shine. And look, maybe it's premature to say this, but I feel like women's wrestling is finally a priority in WWE. But I don't want them to tell us that. I don't want WWE to tell us that women's wrestling matters. I want them to tell us that it matters by showing us that it matters. Because like I said, Impact and NXT have the best results, and you don't hear Shawn Michaels or Scott D'Amore bragging about their women's divisions. They just let them go out there and do their thing. And honestly, I don't think they do it because of PR or anything. I think they legitimately do it because of the fact that they're just really good at how to balance everything. It's a talent management thing. And I think they're able to manage and balance everything correctly. And I think Vince McMahon, his vision for women's wrestling didn't exist. And I think Triple H always favored women's wrestling. Plus, you got to factor in Kairi Sane probably coming back very soon. But I think people kind of knew when Triple H had NXT, he really did push women's wrestling. That's the reason why Sasha Banks became a star. Bayley, Charlotte, Bianca. You could see why they managed to become very popular and very big in WWE. Vince McMahon didn't do that on his own. That was a Triple H, Matt Bloom, Norman Smiley. That's what they did in NXT. Vince McMahon didn't really do much. And then you got to factor in, too. You're putting all these new faces on TV. You're putting them in meaningful storylines. It's good. You're going to need to do that because you already brought in Jade Cargill. She's going to need worthy of opponents. Maybe you want to bring in Thunder Rosa. Maybe you want to bring back Deonna Purrazzo. If you want to make some of those key signings, you're going to have an established women's division. Otherwise, it doesn't work. So it seems like WWE is finally fixing the problem. And I could fully admit I've been critical of their booking from the women's division in the past, but these last few weeks really have been an improvement. And it's significant. And WWE's not touting it, but you can see what they're doing and you can see how it has potential to work. But again, if you're one of those people, you talk about women's wrestling and you want change for women's wrestling, you really want the women to be booked in a better way. Be vocal. Go and support these athletes, right? Support them, cheer for them, tweet about them, praise them, show them love. Show WWE that they're doing a good job when they are doing a good job. And I think that's going to be really good. Let me know what you guys think down below.